Hello everyone and welcome back to our virtual Mishnah Berurah share. We are holding a Mishnah Berurah Chelik Gimel, and Miras Hashem today we will be learning Daf Lamed Hey Amid Beis. We are continuing to learn Hilchos Shabbos. We pick up today on Daf Lamed Hey Amid Aleph, the bottom line, last word on the line, Ha'isha Siman Reish Samach Gimel Sif Aleph. So yesterday we began Siman Reish Samach Gimel. We began discussing the halachas of Hadlakas Neiros of Shabbos. And we learned that really the Iker mitzvah of Hadlakas Neiros is one Ner. There's an old minig that's brought down to have two Neiros because of Zachar v'Shamar. We learned about a very interesting minig, which I personally have never seen, and that is a Zachar v'Shamar candle. A candle, two candles that are braided together with two wicks, so that it's Zachar v'Shamar b'dibur echad. And then the Ramah told us yesterday, you're allowed to add on. You want to add on Neiros? You're allowed to add on Neiros. So you want to have two? You could have two. You want to have three? You could have three. We saw one minig to have 7 because of the 7 days of the week. We saw another minig to have 10 for the Aseres Hadibros. And of course, there's the very prevalent minig nowadays, which is that they add on. A woman adds on one ner for each child. We said that perhaps the Mekar for such a minig is, since we have the Gemara that said, Haragil B'ner, somebody who's Mahader after Neiros Yafa, will have Banim Tamidei Chachamim, so it makes sense that for each additional child, you add on another ner. Okay, against that backdrop, over here, Lamed Aleph, bottom line in the Shulchan Aruch, the final word in the Ramah, says the Ramah, Ha'isha, turning to Lamed Hamid Beis, Ha'isha sheshachacha pam akas lahadlik, a woman who forgets one time to light Shabbos Neiros. Something happens that she doesn't light Shabbos Neiros one Shabbos. Madlekes kol yomeha shloisha Neiros. She has to add on another ner for the rest of her life. So, had she been lighting the default standard of 2 Neiros, so now she would have to light 3 Neiros. And the Ramah explains it's not a problem to add on another ner. If you have a davar hamechuvan, what's a davar hamechuvan? A davar hamechuvan is something that has a specific intent. So if you have a davar hamechuvan, in this case, there's a davar hamechuvan to have 2 Neiros, Zachar v'Shamar, that's a davar hamechuvan, and you want to add on to the davar hamechuvan for another reason, that does not invalidate the davar hamechuvan. You see, you might look at it, you might say, well, wait a second, the minig, the Iker Chiyuv is 1 ner, the minig is 2 Neiros, Zachar v'Shamar. Now, if you add, so you don't have 2 Neiros for Zachar v'Shamar, now you have 3 Neiros. If you have 10 kids, Kenai Hara, and so now you're adding, now you're lighting 12 Neiros, so that's not, it's not 2 Neiros for Zachar v'Shamar, that's gone, it's 12. Says the Rama, no, you could add on to a davar hamechuvan, so the davar hamechuvan, the 2 that are Zachar v'Shamar, those bimkaim medes, you still have 2, you're still covering Zachar v'Shamar. Now you're adding on more neged davar acher, for another purpose. In this case, the purpose would be as a knas, as a penalty to the woman who neglected to be mechabed Shabbos properly, and she forgot to tzin licht, so she gets a knas. So for the rest of her days, she's going to have to add on an additional ner for that knas. U'bilvad, says the Ramah, shelo yivchos, so long as you don't take off from the proper number. If you were supposed to light 2 for Zachar v'Shamar and you can't take it down to 1, then you're subtracting. Subtracting you can't do, because then you no longer have the davar hamechuvan. Says the Mishnah Berurah, cotton zayin here on Lamed Hamid Beis, shloisha Neiros. We said that the woman who forgot to light is now going to have to always light 3. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, Mayri, obviously we're talking in a case, kishahoisa regila b'shnayim, where she was in the habit of lighting the default of 2. But let's say her minig was to light 3 Neiros. So then, now she's going to have to add on 1 for the Shabbos that she missed. So now she's going to have to light 4. Let's say the woman missed lighting Shabbos licht many times for some reason. She's going to have to add on another ner for each time that she missed. And explains the Mishnah Berurah what's behind all of this is Va'akoil mishum knas. This is all a penalty. Kedei shetehei zehira b'kvayit Shabbos. We're penalizing this woman to wake her up so that she should fulfill Kavod Shabbos properly. She should be zehira. She should be careful. B'kvayit Shabbos. Valkein. Since that's the case, since the whole purpose of this extra nair is as a penalty, Valkein im nensa, if the reason she didn't light is because of an oinus, it was something completely unavoidable, Valkein im nensa v'lo yidlika, and she wasn't able to light, kigoin shahoisa beveso asurim, if she was locked up in prison, and they didn't allow her to sin licht in prison, so she couldn't light. So that's an oinus. That's an unavoidable mishap. The kiyotza bazeh was something similar to that. Eino tzricha lahaisif. For that, she wouldn't have to add on. We're not going to penalize her because she experienced an oinus. Kasav El Yerabba, the El Yerabba writes, to be isha aniya, if you have a poor woman. So you have a woman who missed tzinding licht one Shabbos, so she's due a knas. Really, we're going to tell her that she has to light an extra nair for the rest of her life, but she's destitute. She doesn't have money to be able to light another nair. Says Yel Yerabba, to be isha aniya, if we're talking about a poverty-stricken woman, yesh lahakel b'sheshachacha, we could be makel on her if she forgets to light. Shetoisif kol yameha ma'at shemen baner. Instead of penalizing her and tell her that from now on she has to light an extra nair, what we could tell her is add a little oil. You are in the habit of filling up the cups halfway. From now on one of your neiros, fill it up 3/4 of the way. And be moisif. That'll be the knas for the poor woman. Ve'emi madlekes neiros, and if she didn't light oil at all, if she was in the habit of lighting candles, and she can't afford to light another candle, so then what you do is ve'emi madlekes neiros, tadlik tamid ner echad ma'at yoser oroich mi betchila. She should start using for one of her neiros, the same way we say by oil, you should be moisif shemen, you should add oil. So by the candles we say, in one of the neiros, put in a taller candle, put in a bigger candle, and that will be the knas. The Ramah said there's nothing wrong with adding, because you could add on to a davar hamachuvan. If you have something that has a specific intent, you could add on to that, and that doesn't detract from fulfilling the davar hamachuvan. Explains the Mishnah Berurah, it's an Elaymar. What the Ramah wants to say is Sheshtei Neiros hu mechuvan keneged zachar v'shamar v'chanal. The original minig of lighting 2 neiros, that's a davar hamachuvan. That had a specific intent of a zecher to zachar v'shamar. But by adding on lighting 3, 4, 5, you're not detracting from the davar hamachuvan. You still have the davar hamachuvan. Now we go 3 lines down in the Shulchan Aruch here on Lamed Hey Amud Beis, Sif Beis. Says the Mechaber, Echad ha'anoshim, both men, ve'echad ha'anoshim and women, chayavim lihiyos bebatehem ner doluk b'Shabbos. The chiyuv of Neiros Shabbos, the chiyuv of having the nair burning inside the house, is not a chiyuv that's specific to women. It's a chiyuv both on men and on women. And if you take a look at the Be'er Hagoyla Ois Katan Gimel, he brings this down. This is exactly a Lashon HaRambam, Perek Hey Hilchos Shabbos Halacha Aleph. And the truth is, it's really based on a Gemara in Shabbos. The Gemara in Shabbos brings down a memra in the name of Rav, which is very interesting because the Maggid Mishnah, if you take a look at the Rambam, the Maggid Mishnah quotes it from Rabbi Yehuda. But if you look at the Gemara on Chaf Hey Amud Beis, it's a memra in the name of Rav that says that it is a chiyuv of hadlakas neiros. And it's not a chiyuv specifically on, it's not gender-based. It's this chiyuv is a chiyuv on everybody. So there's a chiyuv to have neiros burning in the house on Shabbos. Afilu ein loy ma yoichal, says the Mechaber weiter. Even somebody who is destitute, somebody who's really poverty-stricken, and the way the Mishnah Berurah explains this, it means afilu ein loy ma yoichal, even somebody who is destitute and he doesn't have what to eat, and therefore he is dependent on tzedakah, and tzedakah is providing him with his needs. Afilu ein loy ma yoichal shoyel al apsachim, he should go further, and he should be shoyal al psachim. He should go out and knock on doors, and he should beg if necessary. V'loikech shemen, and he has to try and acquire oil. Madlik es haner, and he has to tzin Shabbos licht. So if you have a destitute person who is completely dependent upon tzedakah, so tzedakah is going to give him his basic needs for Shabbos. Maybe tzedakah will give him to be madlik neiros too. But if tzedakah doesn't give him, if min hakupa, they don't give him to be madlik es haneros, he has to go out and be shoyal al psachim, and he has to somehow manage to acquire shemen to be able to light a ner. Shezeh bichlal oinik Shabbosu, because the ner of Shabbos is an integral part of Einik Shabbos. We discussed this yesterday. And by the way, I just wanted to mention, I spoke yesterday about the sizzle, if you remember. I said that part of the Einik Shabbos of Achila and Shtia is seeing the food. The truth is, it's a Gemara in Yuma. The Gemara in Yuma says that a suma, a blind person, he could eat and he'll get his nourishment, but he won't be soiveya. He won't be satisfied. A blind person will not be able to reach true satisfaction from his eating. And the reason is because he can't see the food. Seeing the food is part of what brings the svia. It's part of what brings the satisfaction. So the Mechaber says over here that you should realize that the ner of Shabbos is an integral part of Einik Shabbos. And therefore, the same way we learned at the beginning of Siman Reish Mem Beis, that tzedakah is somebody who mamish doesn't have, and he's living on tzedakah. Tzedakah has to provide him with mazon gimel seudais. Tzedakah has to provide him even kasa d'harsana, even that little fish, the extra little delicacy for kavod Shabbos. We said tzedakah has to give. And we said that if somebody who is dachuk b'yoser, somebody who's really going through rough financial times, he has to try to kvetch, he has to try to be mitzamtzim, so that he should be able to do something l'kavod Shabbos. So the ner is part of Einik Shabbos, and therefore says the Mechaber, afilu ein lo ma'yochal. Even if you pashut are destitute and you're dependent on tzedakah, you have to do whatever you need to do. Shoyal al psachim. V'loikech shemen umadlik es haner, shezeh b'chlal Einik Shabbos hu. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cut and test. And the truth is, the Mishnah Berurah that we're going to learn right now is a little bit deceptive. It seems very simple, but if you take a look, you'll see that there's a very lengthy biur halacha over here. Biur halacha dibra maschel ein lo ma'yochal, which gives a little bit of the background to it. This is it's a little bit of a shveres sugya, but let's see what the Mishnah Berurah says, and we'll do what we do. This is a Dirshu Mishnah Berurah share. We're not learning it be'iyun rav, so let's take a look here at Mishnah Berurah's cut and test. Says the Chavetz Chaim, ein loy. So the words of the Mechaber, says the Chavetz Chaim, are a little bit, they carry an implication that is not really true. The Mechaber wrote over here, afilu ein lo ma yochal. Even if somebody doesn't have anything to eat, he pashut doesn't have food. So he's going into Shabbos, he has no challah, he has no lechem, he has no pas, he doesn't have anything. So he is ein lo ma yochal, shoyal al psachim. He should go knock on doors and beg. For what? V'loikech shemen umadlik es haner. Sounds from the Mechaber that this person who has to go around begging because ein lo ma yochal, when he goes and he knocks on the door, the first thing that he has to ask for is, listen, could he spare $1? I need to get my hands on some shemen so I could light licht. I pashut don't have for licht. Sounds like that comes before anything else. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's not really true. Says the Chavetz Chaim is cut and test. Ein a kavana de ein loy klal ma yochal. The kavana of the Mechaber is not that this person mamish doesn't have anything, and when he goes and he begs, the number one thing that he has to strive to get, the first thing that he has to ask for, is for some shemen to be madlik es haner. That's not true. De bazeh, if we're talking about such a case, a person who's mamish destitute, mutav sheyachzer al psachim k'dei liknois lechem b'kli Shabbos. The very first thing he's going to have to ask for is pas, bread. That's the first thing he's going to have to ask for. The yekayim bazeh mitzvahs kiddush. First of all, he'll be able to be mekayim the chiyuv of kiddush daraisa, because you can be mekadosh ala pas. So right away, if he has pas, he could be Mekayim the mitzvah of Kiddush, v'gam Iker Suda Shabbos. And also, while it's true that the Ner of Shabbos is part of Einik Shabbos, but the Iker Einik Shabbos is the Su'uda of Shabbos. For that, you need pas. So says the Mishnah Berurah, the very first thing that he has to ask for is basically some pas. Ela kavana, rather the kavana of the Mechaber is, she'ein loy lechol mishal atzmoi. When we're talking about here about a person, afilu ein loy ma yoichal, what we mean is, this is a destitute person who doesn't have anything on his own, and therefore tzedakah is providing for him. So tzedakah is going to give him mazon gimel sudos, because that's what we learned at Reish Ben Beis. We learned at Reish Ben Beis, Sif Aleph, very long Mishnah Berurah over there. We could die to go back and Chazer and Iber. We learned over there that somebody who doesn't have mazon shtei sudos, somebody who Pashut doesn't have, so he could go to the kupa, the collection box of the Kehillah, if you will, the tzedakah fund of the Kehillah, he could go to the kupa, and the kupa is supposed to give him mazon gimel seudos and even kasa daharsana. That's what we learned. The kupa is really supposed to give him. That person says to Mechaber, if they gave you that, but they didn't give you shemen to be madlikas aner, you have to be chayzer al psachim. Go knock on doors, to go be mishtadel, to do whatever you can, to go get a bissel shemen to be able to be madlik aner. So the Mishnah Berurah says it inside. He says, Ela kavana she'ein lecha mishal atzmai. He doesn't have anything on his own. Shehu misparnes mikupas tzedakah. This person is being fed off of the community chest. Afilu hachi tzarich lehishtada lahasig gam kein ner l'Shabbos. The Mechaber is telling you that such a person, he still has to go. He can't say, okay, the kupa gave me whatever they gave me. They gave me basic needs for Shabbos. I don't have an air. No, you have to go ahead and get an air. Now let's say we're not talking about somebody who is eating off of the community chest. We're talking about somebody who is poverty-stricken. He's very, 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 very tight, but he has enough money to be able to have put together mazon shtei seudos. Umi sheyesh lo mois mitzvah mitzvahs lechem l'suda Shabbos kaidem l'koil. Still, before Ner Shabbos is going to come basic pas for your seuda. Whether or not that means lechem mishta, that's a more complicated shiloh. V'ner l'Shabbos kaidem likach mishar ma'acholim. And then the Ner Shabbos is going to be next. So if you have bread, you don't use the next food, the next money that you have available to get a piece of salmon. You don't use it to get a little hot chicken soup. If you have bread and you still have more money, then the next thing you do with the money is Ner Shabbos. Because even though it's true that you might look at it and you say, Mali salmon, Mali Neiros Shabbos. Both of them are inyanim of Einik Shabbos. So who says that the Ner Shabbos comes before the piece of salmon? Maybe the piece of salmon should come before the Ner Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah, even though other foods and delicacies like meat, who gamkein b'chlal Einik Shabbos, even though it's true that those are all included in Einik Shabbos, so why are they worse than the Ner Shel Shabbos? Mikamakam, nevertheless, Ner Odif, Ner Shabbos takes precedence. Yoiser, Mishum Shalom Bayis, Ukidl Kamon. Because of the Indian of Shalom Bayis, like the Mechaber is going to say himself, we'll see it Mirz Hashem in tomorrow's Shir. The Indian of Shalom Bayis, and again, we mentioned yesterday, this doesn't necessarily mean peace between husband and wife. This means that the atmosphere in the house, it's more literal. Shalom Bayis, the peace of the household. We want the household to be peaceful and pleasant and happy. And if people are walking into the walls and they're stepping on little pieces of Lego and they're stubbing their toe on the bed frame, that's not going to be a pleasant household. So in order to have Shalom Bayis on Shabbos, you must have an heir. So therefore it takes precedence over other types of Einik Shabbos, like a piece of salmon or a piece of brisket. Umiu, however, says the Chavetz Chaim, Mishum Ner, but when I'm telling you that Ner comes first, in order to be B'kaim the mitzvah of Ner, Dai Ner Echad L'chud. One Ner alone is enough. You don't need 12 Neris. You don't even need 2 Neris. So Zachar V'Shamar, 2 Neris, that's not necessarily going to come before the piece of salmon. 1 Ner, the Iker mitzvah of Neiros Shabbos. V'Ashar Yotzi Al Machali Shabbos. the next money that you have available, taka use it to go get yourself a piece of salmon or something else. Because again, we learned at the beginning of Siman Reish Ben Beis that even a mamish and oni has to try to do something. He should try to be mitzamtzim to be able to do something extra on Shabbos, even because of the harsana, a little fried fish. He should try to do something l'chvay Shabbos. V'ayim b'masha kasav do la'el b'Siman Reish Ben Beis b'Mishnah Berurah Sif Cotton Aleph. Ois Cotton Yud. The Mechaber said you have to be machzer al psachim. You have to go knock on doors and beg in order to have Neiros Shabbos. To who ikar oinig suda Shabbos. Now, the words over here of the Mishnah Berurah are a little bit deceptive. It sounds like the Mishnah Berurah is saying, you want to know what the ikar oinig Shabbos is? The ikar oinig Shabbos is hadlakas neiros. It's not what he means. What he means is that the ner of Shabbos is an ikar part of oinig Shabbos. It's a main part of Einik Shabbos. Don't think that you could look at Neiros Shabbos and think that somehow they're a little bit secondary, and then maybe you'll apply what Rabbi Akiva said, Asay Shabbat Chachel Val Titztarach Lebrios, and you'll just skip on Hadlakas Neiros. No, Hadlakas Neiros is an ikar. It's an integral part of Einik Shabbos. But again, he's reminding us, but in order to be Mekayim, the basic chiyuv of Neiros Shabbos, that only requires one ner. Okay, moving on to Sif Gimel, 2 lines from the bottom here on Lamed Hey Amud Beis in the Shulchan Aruch near the end of the line. So, we kind of look at Neiros Shabbos as being the woman's mitzvah, right? Girl becomes a kala, the shviger goes out to buy leichter for the kala. How about buying leichter for the chassan? I mean, we just said in Sif Beis, Echad ha'anoshim ve'echad ha'anoshim chayavam liyos bebateim ner dolok b'Shabbos. I'm just as chayiv in Neiros Shabbos as my wife is. So how did it become a woman's mitzvah? Now, the truth is that there are, comes to my mind right away, 2 very powerful places in the Mishnah where we see that it's a woman's mitzvah. One is Al Gimel, what's the Lashon Al Gimel mitzvahs? Nashim Meisais B'Shas Lidosam. There are 3 mitzvahs that their neglect would chas v'chalila cause a woman to pass away during childbirth, right? Oh, whoops, you see, I took out a Nusach Sfard Siddur. Nusach Sfard Siddur is not going to have it. Sorry. Nusach Ashkenaz Siddur. All right? Al Nidav, Al Chalav, Al Hadlakas Haner. Those are the 3 mitzvahs that could really, never chas v'chalila, if a woman is not nizar, she could really get bitten in the back from these 3 mitzvahs. Okay, so nida we understand, right? Nida just physically. That's that's something that is part and parcel of being a woman. Chala, okay, generally speaking, the woman is the one who's in the kitchen baking, right? So, okay, so chala is a woman's mitzvah. V'al hadlakas haner. Now again, hadlakas haner, what do you mean? It's my chiyuv the same way it's her chiyuv. Yet the Mishnah says, the Mishnah attributes at this mitzvah to the woman. She is the one that has to be nizar in hadlakas haner. Another Mishnah is the one that we spoke about previously, which is that kaidam chashecha, one of the things that the husband is supposed to say to the wife is, hadliku es haner, go light. Well, wait a second, why are you telling the woman to go light? Why don't you go light? Elabai, you see from these Mishnayos very clearly that somehow this mitzvah is put into the domain of the woman, not into the domain of the man. So let's take a look here what the Mechaber says. Says the Mechaber Sif Gimel, Hanoshim muzharos boy yoiser. Women are commanded, they are the ones that are more muzharos. They are warned or commanded. It's not mitzvah, but yoiser. It's more in their domain than it is in the domain of a man. Hanoshim muzharos by yoiser. Why, says the Mechaber? Mipnei she mitzuyos babayis. Take a look at the Baragoyla, you'll see that the Mechaber is taking this out of the Rambam. Mipnei she mitzuyos babayis, because kol kfuda bas melech pnima, the woman is based in the home. That's the woman's base of operations. At least that's the way it's supposed to be. The woman's base of operations is the home. Mili de besa. Things that have to do with the home are more the domain of the wife. So hadlakas neiros is mili de besa. It's part of the house. It's setting up the house. It's making sure that the house is a pleasant environment because it's lit up. It's making sure that the Suda is lit up. It's like setting the table. This is more in a woman's domain than a man's domain. So says the Mechaber, it's pashut practical. Hanoshim musaris b'yoser mipnei shemitzuyis b'bayis. V'ois gois b'tzarchei abayis. They're the ones that are more oisik b'tzarchei abayis. Let's take a look here at the Mishnah Berurah. Says the Mishnah Berurah is cutting it aleph. Hanoshim musaris. And therefore, it says the Chavetz Chaim, if you'll get a man who'll say, listen, I learned Dirshu, and it says that Hadlakas Neiros is just as much my chiv as your chiv. You know what? I want to do this mitzvah. Why am I leaving it to my wife? I want to do it. Says the Chavetz Chaim, no. Even if the husband gets up and says he wants the tzidlicht, no. Ha'isha kademes. The woman has kedima, brings this down from the Magen Avram. It belongs to a woman. The woman has the right to get up and say, no, it's my mitzvah, I want to do it. Unless, he brings down from the Prima Godim, if they have the minig to light a lot of Neiros, yachal hu gam kein lahadlik. So then he could say, you know what, leave me one. I also want to light. Now he says a very interesting thing. Ukishi yoledes. When a woman gives birth, b'Shabbos Rishona, the very first Shabbos after she gives birth, madlik kabal, the husband should light, umavarich, and the husband should make the bracha. Now, when you read this Mishnah Berurah, you're like, what? The first Shabbos after my wife gives birth, she shouldn't sin licht? I should sin licht? Why? What's going on here? So the truth is, when you look into the Mefarshim over here, what comes out is that we're talking about a case where the woman just gave birth and she's in bed. She can't get out of bed, right? It's not, nowadays somehow the expectation is that a woman gives birth, they throw her out of hospital a day and a half later, and she's supposed to go to work. 3 days later, she's supposed to be going back to work. I don't know where this comes from. I mean, halacha always treats a yoledes as somebody who's weak, as somebody who needs to be taken care of. Baruch Hashem, nowadays, we're a little bit more, I think in the frumma world, they're more cognizant of it. That's why you have these kippaturin homes, etc. But yoledes is shvach. So therefore, the Mishnah Berurah is telling you the first week that the woman, after the woman has a baby, the husband should light. Now again, you might look at this and say, why does the Mishnah Berurah have to tell me this? I mean, is the Mishnah Berurah telling me if your wife is bedridden, so then you should light, not your wife? But if she could get out of bed, then she should light. So the truth is, again, it comes out from the Mefarshim and the Paiskim that a woman who could be up and around after childbirth, she taka should light. The husband shouldn't light. But there's a reason why the Mishnah Berurah is saying this. The Mishnah Berurah is saying this because there was a prevalent minig back in the day, it seems, that when a kimpator, when a woman who just had a baby, would come home and she was taka in bed, and it was hard for her to get out of bed, they still wanted to light. And since this is, so to speak, the woman's mitzvah, they went out of their way to make sure that she should be able to light. So the minig became that the woman stayed in bed, and the husband brought the neiros to the woman by her bedside, and she went ahead and made a bracha and lit by the bedside, and then the husband took the licht and relocated the licht down to the dining room, to the makom ha'achila. That's what the Mishnah Berurah is coming la'afuke. The Mishnah Berurah is telling you should not do that, because we're going to see later that there's a potential, at least, halachic issue in relocating the licht. So therefore, what the Mishnah Berurah is telling you over here is, a woman who just gave birth, and it's the first Shabbos after she gave birth, and she can't get out of bed, if she could get out of bed, so fine, she'll get out of bed and she'll sit licht. But if she can't get out of bed, don't bring her the neiros and then relocate them. Instead, the husband should light, and the husband should make the bracha. Says the Mishnah Berurah weiter, Ubimei nidusa, when a woman is a nida, ha'isha mevareches ba'atzma, she should still make the bracha, and she should still sin licht. This is la'afuke, some that said that when a woman is a nida, she shouldn't make brachas, this, that, but obviously we don't pass in that way. So the Mishnah Berurah is just pointing out that even when a woman is a nida, she should sin licht, and she should make the bracha. Ois cotton yud beis. So the Mechaber said that the noshim are muzharois by yoiser, that the women are more muzhar. the mitzvah of Hadlakas Neiros Shabbos is a woman's domain more than it is a man's domain. And the explanation that was given by the Mechaber seemed to be more of, so to speak, a practical explanation. The Mechaber said, why is a woman musharos yoser? Because the tzarchei habayis are on the woman. The house is her domain. It's her kitchen. It's our dining room. So the tzarchei habayis are on the woman. Since the tzarchei habayis are on the woman, so this mitzvah of Hadlakas Neiros belongs to the woman, not to the man. Says the Mishnah Berurah cutting Yud Beis, va'oid tam. There's another reason why this is more of a woman's mitzvah than a man's mitzvah. Va'oid tam. There's another reason. Mipnei shekivsa neiroi shel olam. Because Chava Imenu, woman, by virtue of the fact that she ate from the Eitz Hadas, that she gave Adam Arishon from the Eitz Hadas, Kivsa Neiroi Shel Olam. She dimmed and extinguished the Ner, the light of the world. Adam Arishon was called the Neiroi Shel Olam. Now, very interesting. Why is Adam Arishon known as the Ner, the lamp, the light of the world? One reason that's brought down is because we know the pasuk says that Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. What's Hashem's Ner, so to speak? The neshama that the Rabbanu Shalom blew into the guf of a mensch. Vayipach ba'apav Nishmas Ruach Chaim. That neshama, that spiritual aspect of our existence, which science doesn't know what to do with, so they try not to discuss it. They can't understand what is this consciousness that the guf has a consciousness, and then when a person passes away, that consciousness is gone. What is it? What is that spark? In dry scientific terms, they can't understand it. They can't explain it. They don't know what it is. So they very studiously and carefully avoid it, because should they not avoid it, it would lead them to an unavoidable and for them very uncomfortable truth. And that is that we are made up out of a chelik of gashmi. We're made up of something megushim, earthly, material. We're a guf min ha'adama. We're very material. But vayipach ba'apav nishmas ruach chaim. But then the Rabbanu Shalom took ruchnius, a nefesh, a neshama, chelik elikim mimal, and injected it into us. And that's what animates us, and that's what gives us this consciousness, and gives us life, and gives us spirituality. So Chava dimmed that by bringing Misa into the world. Once Adam Arishon ate from the Eitz Hadas, so the knas, the einish to Adam Arishon, part of that was Misa. Misa came into the world. It's also brought down that within Adam Harishon were all of the neshamas that were asid to come onto the world. All of the neshamas that eventually came into the world. My neshama, your neshama. Everybody's neshama was bound together in Adam Arishon's neshama. So when the pasuk says, Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam, Adam Arishon was the Neiroi Shel Olam, because he had all of the neshamas wrapped up in him. And Chava Imenu Kavsa, she dimmed it or extinguished it by bringing Misa into the world, and therefore, in order to be misakin that, she has to be madlik the Neiros of Shabbos. Says the Mishnah Berurah inside, we had another concept like this when it comes to the mitzvah of challah, that a woman bakes challah for Shabbos, and she's mafresh challah because she damaged the chalasoi shel olam. We said that Adam Arishon was also called the challah of the world, because the Rabbanu Shalom, so to speak, it's like he made a dough, he made the world, and then he was mafresh challah. He took Adam Arishon and he formed Adam Arishon min ha'adama. So that was like being mafresh challah, and built that ultimately into the whole purpose of the world, which is a mensch that can be b'kayim Torah u'mitzvahs. So by being mafresh challah and being madlikas haneros, women are being misakin that chet. Nevertheless, continues the Chavetz Chaim, Tov shel ish yesakein haneros. While it's true that the woman should be the one to be madlikas haneros, the man should prepare the neiros. I prepare the neiros, I light them and then blow them out so that they should be easier to light. That's to be mesakin the neiros. Why should the husband be mesakin as a neiros? is brought down in the Mishnah Berurah here from the Shara Kavanos. But one of the reasons is because, like we said, it's his chiyuv also. So if it's your chiyuv, don't just ignore it and just leave it over to the woman as if it has nothing to do with you. No, you should be involved in it too, and you should be at least misayeya. Okay, we're going to stop over here. Thank you so much for joining me for limud HaTorah. The schus of limud HaTorah should be megan against Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe Shem should send Yeshua's refuahs parnas and shidduchim to those in need. We should be zoichet to see the biaska el tzedek b'mheira v'yameinu amen. Be well.